What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central podcast. And the New York Mets traveled from Sacramento to Minnesota to finish off their road trip, as unfortunately the New York Mets fall in that road trip by losing 2 out of 3 to the Minnesota Twins. A very frustrating series. There's a lot of concerns to be had after this series, in my opinion. And this is kind of the series, for me at least, that kind of cemented where okay, it's 18 games in, but there are things that I definitely am worried about. Obviously, people are worried about Juan Soto, and there's comments that he made that we will address, of course, at one point in this episode. But yeah, we got a lot to get into today, and then obviously we'll, preview the series coming up against the Cardinals, as that will be a 4 game set as the Mets start their big homestand. But on your way into the stream, or if you're watching on replay, leave a like if you do enjoy the content. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans, and turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live here on Met Central. And in the chat, we are going to pull up your comments as they come in, or at least try to. But if it's not relevant to the conversation, we will get to your comments later. We promise that we are not ignoring your conversation, ignoring your comments. We are just trying to keep the conversation relevant to what the topic is at hand. But yeah, Matt, how we feeling after I would say, the most frustrating stretch of games here of the season? Luckily, it's just 3 games, but definitely very frustrating.
Probably the word that I would overall sum up more so the 3 games against the Twins was just overall disappointing because we talked about it last podcast when we were breaking down and previewing the Twins series. We talked about it that the Twins at that point were not playing well. They were not playing good baseball, and that was certainly a team that you had to take advantage of. And definitely, like I know you brought up that you think they should sweep them, and I was like, just take 2 out of 3, keep on winning series, but just the way. And listen, it's 18 games in. I'm not freaking out about the team. Like the team is a good team. Like, don't get me wrong, but there definitely are a couple concerns as of right now, and we'll talk about it later on this podcast. But mostly with the offense. But there is definitely a few concerns that that the Mets have to improve upon right away before they start playing the better teams. And yeah, I mean, just overall, just a frustrating, disappointing series because, like I said, this is a series that you should have taken from the Twins. But overall, like right now, the Mets are just not playing good baseball. And like I know, like we'll talk about it, like how the offense is struggling, but this series wasn't just about the offense. There was a lot of things that went wrong for the Mets, and right now, like I said, overall, they're just playing sloppy baseball.
Yeah, and that's really the concerning part, is that a lot of it is just mental mistakes. Like, it's not even the other team. Like the Twins, give them credit for some things, like, running out certain plays and playing the game hard pause. But like, the difference between that and the Mets, like, the Mets are just making mental errors that we didn't see them make last year, because this team was so good defensively and so spot on with all of their, all the mental fundamentals of the game. Right now, they just fundamentally look lost. And especially in that game 3, which we'll talk a lot about, of course, because I think that game really has the most to take away out of any, at least in my opinion. But yeah, like, just no plate approach right now. There's just so much slop going on. So let's not waste any more time, though. Let's get into recapping this series here, because there is, like I said, a lot to talk about here. And we kind of saw more of the same off the rip in this first game of the series, which they ended up winning 5-1. But in that first inning, when Lindor gets that leadoff double, Soto strikes out, Alonso would get that walk, and the Mets just do not drive him in. Clay Holmes was absolutely dealing. There were times he was facing a little adversity, but in that third inning, the Mets offense finally gets going. Acuna would end up walking, stole a bag, and then Pete Alonso drives him in with a single. He stays locked in at the plate. That made it 1-0. Then you fast forward further into the game, and you go to the fifth inning, where Clay Holmes would hit a little bit of a wall as he starts to lose control, walking a batter, hitting a batter as well, throwing wild pitches. And then unfortunately, Christian Vasquez would get a sacrifice fly to tie the game up at 1. But the Mets would respond as Pete Alonso gets a single, and Mark Vientos would then drive him in with an RBI double. And then Luis Torrens would get on from an error, as the Twins pitching staff has had a lot of throwing errors, and that ended up making it 3-1. Fast forward to the seventh inning, Acuna would get a single, and then Juan Soto would hit his second home run of the season, which was great to see, and that made it 5-1. And the Mets would end up closing this game out as the bullpen. You got a little bit of scares from Ryan Stanek towards the end that maybe Diaz would have to come in, but overall, outside of that, the bullpen gave a very good effort as they usually do. And from that game one, it was kind of similar to what we've talked about with every single game this season thus far, where again, you look at the box score and you see they won, you're happy about it, but you see 2 for 12 with runners in scoring position, and you're thinking, getting traffic on the bases. Could we get the big hit though, please? And then Clay Holmes, this it's kind of the same story with the starters too. Like there's a lot of things that go on in these outings, and unfortunately, it cuts these starters from going deep in the games. And Clay Holmes wasn't an exception to that because 2 hits, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts. You would think, all right, he's going to go deep in that game, but unfortunately, he's only able to go 5 as the pitch count just got too high, especially losing control in that one inning. But yeah, the bullpen shut it down, thankfully. There's really not too much to take away from this game other than it was great to see Pete Alonso still locked in. Great to see Juan Soto get a home run, Vientos get a huge hit, but still a lot that was to be desired, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. That first game was more the same, like what we've been talking about in the last couple podcasts, where the offense doesn't do much until they get to a certain inning, and then you kind of see the runs gonna come across, and then kind of the same with the pitching. And I mean, I want to start off with Clay Holmes because I thought Clay Holmes was really good. And I know people like they probably don't want to hear it because he was barely even able to get through 5 innings. But you know, this was probably along with Clay Holmes' last start, like the most encouraging that I've seen from Clay Holmes that was a spring training start because for the first time this season, and we talked about it before, and I brought up before, but his sinker was a pitch that he hasn't really gotten a hold of yet this season. But this start, I really loved seeing Clay Holmes sinker. He was throwing it a ton. He threw it 36 times, and he was really starting to execute it. He started to locate it. He got a tons of swings and misses on it. Also utilized the kick change a ton, which I liked because his kick change was really good. Threw that about 22 times, and I mean, really, those were his best 2 pitches because if you break it down, the sinker threw it 36 times, got 15 swings, 5 whiffs, and then when you look at the changeup threw it 22 times and got 15 swings and 6 whiffs on that. So Clay Holmes overall, I thought was pretty good until he got to that 5th inning where he would So I'm gonna bring it up here where he walked Trevor Larnach, he hit Ty France with a pitch. He walks Brooks Lee, and then Vasquez does get the sacrifice fly, and then he does he does do a good job of getting out of the inning with getting Edward Julian to ground out, and then Byron Buxton to strike out. But I mean, it's sort of like what you brought it up on when you did the podcast. I mean, the post game recap for the first game. Like, it's progress, and I know people don't want to hear like that. It's good progress because people just want to see results right away. But this is something that we talk about with Clay Holmes. Like, it's going to take a little bit for him to finally find that groove and that stretch to where he's fully comfortable and he's going consistently like 6 innings and he's giving you like every outing where he's only given up 2 to 3 runs. But for me, it's encouraging that, and this is like typically what we see with Clay Holmes. It starts where he'll do fine and then he'll get to that one inning where he gets into a little bit of trouble. I think just again with a little bit more adjustments, and so he doesn't have that one inning where he kind of hits that snag. I think Clay Holmes is really close, to making those couple adjustments, and then, like I said, he'll be that starting pitcher where he'll consistently go out there. He'll give you 6 innings. He'll give you only where he'll give up only 2 to 3 runs a game. And I think for me, that's where we fully expect Clay Holmes. Like I don't like I was saying before, I don't need Clay Holmes to go out there and give me Cy Young stuff every outing, but I just need him to go out there and be consistent and just give really good outings at a consistent rate. And so far, like I said, he's got to make a couple of few adjustments, but I think he's really close to becoming that pitcher that we fully expected him to be when he signed here. And then overall with the offense, like I said, more of the same. Again, it was nice to see Pete Alonso come through in the 3rd inning, getting that RBI single and driving in Luis Angel Acuna. It was then really nice to see, Mark Vientos finally. It looks like he's finally getting out of that funk because a lot of his at bats the last couple series have been pretty good. I know the results haven't been there, but I think overall, just the way he's been working counts, the way he's been making hard contact, it looks like that he's finally starting to get out of that funk. And again, good to see that he got the RBI double. Obviously, they bring another one a run with the Luis Torrens error, and then Juan Soto. Nice to see him finally get off the snag with him hitting a 2-run home run to make it 5-1. And then, yeah, I mean, pretty much after that, the offense didn't do much. And then, Brazaban came in, and again, another really good relief outing from him. He was strong. Reed Garrett again came in. He looked good. And then, Ryan Stanek, like you mentioned, like looked a little bit shaky, but overall got his command under him and then closed out that game for another win.
Yeah, that's like the biggest thing with me with Clay Holmes. It's just again like I want to see progress early on because I know people are probably tired of me bringing it up, but it's the same thing that Michael King went through last year. There was that adjustment period where he was really trying to figure out how to use the new toolbox and put it all together to help him get deeper in the games. And a lot of the issues for him was control issues. Like it wasn't something where because if Clay Holmes was like throwing batting practice out there and getting teed off and the stuff just didn't look good, we're having a completely different conversation. But every outing, the stuff is good. It's just that either bad defense is holding him back from going deep, or it's the fact that he's losing control, which obviously that's something you want to see him improve on. But that will come as the outings go along. That will come as he continues to, really get used to the rhythm here of being a starter and going out there every 5, 6 days now that, we're about to approach the mark here where we're having a 6-man rotation. But again, like we try to preach patience with this. If he's still routinely doing this in like May or June, I think that's a different conversation to have and be like, all right, this is who he is. Like he's just gonna give 4 to 5 innings and then he's just gonna hit that wall, unfortunately. But there's so many times where it's just like again, it's so avoidable what he's giving, and he could go deeper. It's just we're unfortunately gonna have to play what every single Mets fan and just every fan base in New York hates. We have to just be patient. We have to be patient with these things. But yeah, as for something that's not worth being patient about, the offense, like I said in this game, there were things that were good, things that again weren't so great. I don't know if you want to expand your thoughts on the offense in this game before we move on to game two, but yeah, just more frustration in that regard.
I mean, it's really just more the same, like what we were talking about. And I think the biggest thing with the offense is like we know that the offense has plenty of talent. Again, when you look at the top of the lineup, you have Francisco Lindor, you have Juan Soto, you have Pete Alonso. Like these guys, we know that they're going to hit, even if right now some of them aren't, playing up to their full potential. It's more for me just the whole plate approach, and we'll get into this more when we talk about Game 3 because Game 3 pissed that probably pissed us off the most just with the way how that game unfolded. But just again, like the lack of a plate approach is just insane because it's just too many times. And this mostly like goes out there for a guy because like we're gonna talk about him probably a lot this episode, but a guy like Brandon Nimmo for me he's been one of the most frustrating guys for me because with Nimmo, we know that there's a very good player in him, but it just feels like at this point right now, and again, it's only 18 games in, so it's still very early, and there's still plenty of time for him to fix things up and change. But it just feels for me that whenever Brandon Nimmo goes up, and you brought this up before, but it's like you don't know what you're gonna get from Brandon Nimmo. Like, are you gonna get a good at bat, or he's taking pitches and he's fouling off pitches, or are you gonna get an at bat where it just looks like he's flustered and he's going up there swinging first pitch and making light contact to where he's grounding out or popping up with guys on base. It's just and again, it's not just Brandon Nimmo. It's pretty much the entire offense, apart from a guy like Pete Alonso, because Alonso at this point is just locked in, and it seems like every at bat he's just he's working counts, he's making hard contact, but it's just again, it's the whole Eric Chavez thing. Whatever happens, happens, and I would like to think that that this team and this offense could overcome Eric Chavez and win games in spite of him. I just, for me at this point, and again, it's not 18 games in with Chavez. This is, going all the way back to 2022 when he was first hired. I don't see how the Mets could take that next step with Eric Chavez being being the hitting coach, because again, his whole philosophy is just like, especially in a game of modern age where a lot of things are analytics and looking at numbers and basing matchups and strategy against that. Like, I don't know how you can just go up there and like just basically say like, oh, whatever happens, happens. Just look for that one pitch and then cool.
And
If you
provide
get it,
no information to
yeah, it just
the hitters.
it's insane. And like, because we know, like, especially from last year, we know that David Stearns is not hesitant to make a move, like, when it's warranted, because we saw him a bunch of times that when a guy was underperforming, he would get DFA'd. He would get traded. There would be moves. And the thing with Chavez for me is like he was not a David Stearns hire, because he was hired when Billy Epler was here. So, and especially, with the whole philosophy difference, because we know David Stearns is more of an analytics guy. He loves to look at numbers, and Chavez is a guy that doesn't. I'm really interested to see that, how long that if the offense continues to struggles, how long that this goes until Chavez is removed from his spot, because like I said, he was not a David Stearns hire. Like, David Stearns has no emotional attachment to him. So I hope it's fairly soon. I don't know at this current spot.
By the way, unrelated to that, and I'll expand on that. We just got breaking news actually live on the show here for once from Anthony DeComo that Jose Azocar is going to be replacing Jose Siri, who's finally going on the IL, which we'll talk about that obviously, and other injury news. Max Kranick got recalled, which isn't a surprise, and then Justin Hageman was optioned. So I guess we'll wait to see who the sixth starter will be next, but yeah, just thought I would throw that in there since that literally just broke on cue here. As for the Chavez thing, though, yeah, it's just like when you hear things coming out about how they pretty much like they don't use analytics or scout too in depth with certain pitchers. Like the fact that they're sending guys to the plate without any sort of mindset or approach or like where the weakness is with certain pitchers. It's just again, how do you do that into we're in 2025. This isn't back in my day type stuff. This isn't when you were playing Eric Chavez back in the early 2000s. This is 2025 baseball. You can't go up there to the plate without any information. The biggest thing that we've talked about, and we brought it up all of last year too, when even this team was good, we never gave Chavez flowers because every single time praise came out about anyone in the hitting department, it was either Barnes
JD.
or it was JD Martinez. It was those two guys that got the praise for the plate approach being better, the offense, performing the way it did, actually having a mindset going up to the plate, a strategy, I guess is the better word to use, going up to the plate. Where now it's what you said, whatever happens, happens. And what Chavez says, and he's basically said those words exactly that whatever happens, happens up there at the plate. Like you can't win games like that and have a successful offense in 2025. And then even last year too, again, when this team was thriving, we had our criticisms because of the whole thing with Francisco Alvarez, where he's telling him, don't pull the ball. Like, you need to learn to spread the field a little bit more. When that makes no sense. Like, we're in 2025. Pulling the ball, just when you think about it from the science itself, like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that naturally pulling the ball is going to lead to harder exit velos. Like this doesn't take a genius to figure that out. And instead, Eric Chavez is like, no, we got to spread the field a little bit more. Just put the ball in play and hope whatever happens, happens. Sure, that will work against the bad teams that make errors. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now with this team, where they're getting wins against teams because they're making errors. But that doesn't work when you play the Dodgers. That doesn't work when you play any of these top teams in the MLB who actually have good fundamentals, that have offenses that go up there with a strategy and that could counter what you're doing. So, and obviously just, the main thing, dominant pitchers. So this is where my biggest concern is of it all after 18 games in. And again, it's more than just the 18 game thing, like you said with Chavez. It's the fact that he's here and there's no signs that it's going to get better as long as he's here.
No, because even then, like, because even last year, like, we saw spurts where the offense was just hitting the balls hard. They were hitting home runs. They were making hard contact. But it's like I brought up before, and you could even, circle this and track this down back to 2022. But again, there was points from that year and points of last year where everyone in the lineup was hitting all at once, and it was synced. It was like boom. But then you would see points where everyone just at the same time couldn't hit. And it's like I brought up before, the bipolar offense. Like, because there will be times where everyone in the lineup seems like they're hitting, and then there'll be times like we see right now where nobody's hitting, and it's just I can't even get excited at that because at some point we know it's going to even out and it's going to go back to normal. So I don't know at this point. It seems like right now we're counting down the days for Eric Chavez to be fired because, and it's like I said, this team is a good team. Like they're going to win a lot of baseball games, but we want this team to take the next step and to be a World Series contender. And at this point in 2025, with the way opposing teams like the Dodgers and other top teams are playing right now, like the Padres, their motto is pulling the ball, making hard contact, exit velocity, and launch angle. And as of right now, with the way Chavez employs his strategy and philosophy, like like, okay, maybe it might get the Mets again to the NLCS where they got last year, but when you come up against those teams like the Dodgers, ultimately you're gonna fall because just like what we saw last year, like the Dodgers, whenever they put guys on base, they take advantage. And right now, like the Mets, like they're getting them, like the Mets are getting in plenty of scoring opportunities. But again, it seems like whenever they go up there with guys on base, they freak out. There's no approach, and they swing first pitch. They don't make good contact, and and that's how you easily bail opposing pitchers out of bad innings. It's just I'm currently lost right now.
Yeah, and it's like, so is this offense because, like Brian's saying here, I don't understand why Chavez thinks pulling the ball is bad as long as you get a hit. Who cares? And that's the thing too. Like, um I'm not so anti put the ball in play and whatever happens happens, but like that can't be the approach. Like there's situational hitting where that applies. Like when you're down in account 0-2 and you need to take a hack where it's just like, all right, see what you could do and just try to put the ball in play at that point. Like that's different. But these guys are going up there to the plate and they're just again putting the ball in play and it just kind of we'll see what happens type thing. It's a problem. It's embarrassing, and this is also the thing too. Like the Mets offense has one player with an OPS over 800, and it's Pete Alonso. I will read you guys currently the team overall, just looking at every single offensive player combined, and this factors in Pete Alonso. So imagine where they are without him. This is so bad to read. 219 average, 301 on base, 372 slugging, 673 OPS, a 1.7 WAR, an OPS plus of 95. You're not going to win baseball games. You are just not. And I'll say this too, that there definitely is some blame to go on David Stearns to some regard with this because there were guys that you know I- I'm not going to fault him entirely because he did target guys like Jock and Teoscar Hernandez who unfortunately didn't come in, but it is on him where there isn't a veteran right now to push a Brett Beatty or Luis Acuna, which Acuna wasn't bad this series, so I don't want to blame just uh you know the second base thing, but like it's not good enough at the end of the day. The DH spot, it's not good enough what you're getting. And, I can't fault him with Vientos being the way he is, Lindor getting off to the start that he is. I can't fault him, but some of it does fall on him to where there are things where in the margins these guys are failing, and part of it does fall on him. But that doesn't mean I lost my trust in Stearns. I want to make that clear. But he does deserve his share of blame in that regard. And this is it. Like the Mets are just going up there, packing with no plan. There's no plate approach. It's just the thing that drives me nuts. And I've brought it up on the post game shows time and time again. And we're going to get into it with game three, especially. Nothing drives me insane more than watching your teammate in front of you draw a walk, and especially when no pitches are in the strike zone and you go up there first pitch swinging. It's just basic things where it's like, how do you watch the guy in front of you draw a walk, no pitches in the zone, and think, let me first pitch swing? And then if you are going to first pitch swing, you better daddy hack the ball the fuck out of the ballpark.
Yeah, just I mean, and again, then overall with the whole DH thing, it's like it's hard to blame David Stearns with that one, with the whole platoon thing, because again, like he wasn't the one that signed Starling Marte. That's again thanks to the magnificent Billy Epler for that signing, because I mean right now, like, and again we saw it in the second game, but Starling Marte in 2025 should not be hitting cleanup. Like it makes no the guy like okay, fine, he hit a home run against Miami, but I mean the guy, he doesn't hit the ball hard. Like and then again, like the one thing that he did in that second game where the guy is bunting and he can't run. First of all, you should never be bunting when you're fucking hitting cleanup. That's the first off thing. And then second of all, when your bottom half is compromised and you can't run and you're not the same speedster that you were before in your career, why are you bunting? It makes no sense. And listen, I get it. And I can't blame Stearns for the whole platoon thing, because I mean overall, like I get that Winker hasn't been perfect this year, because there's been some ABs where I haven't liked his approach. But I mean, when you compare Jesse Winker to Starling Marte, it's like night and day. Like Jesse Winker, for there's some ABs where it's like he's in the ABs, he's fighting off pitches, he's making hard contact, he's getting on base, he's hitting the ball hard. And then you look at a guy like Marte where it's just like, you know, not only is he's taking pitch down the middle, he's swinging over pitches down the middle as well. I mean, there was pictures from that second game's Twin Series where he's getting a fastball down the middle, and he's swinging over it, and it's like, and again, I mean, you compare the values of the DHs, because I mean, for the value that the Mets are getting at Jesse Winker right now, where he's only making $7 million, like that's fair production out of a guy like Jesse Winker. But then you compare it again to a guy like Starling Marte, who's making $20 million. Like it's so much dead weight. And we brought this up before, and you brought it up on the last post game that you did, but it's time, or it's pretty much about that time for Marte to get the Robinson Cano treatment, because this team needs like a real bona fide DH. And I think Jesse Winker can be a valuable guy, but not as that regular DH guy. Like I'm totally fine with Winker just being a bench option and a pinch hit guy from whenever the time, but there really needs to be a point where Marte does get DFA'd. And then I know like probably a big trade is going to happen right now, but as we get closer to the trade deadline, and maybe hopefully a team like the Angels fall off and a guy like Jorge Soler becomes available, that's the guy who you target to be a bona fide DH.
Yeah, because like all the talks of this team needs to go out and trade for a starting pitcher are dying very quickly, because every loss has been on the offense. Like, say what you want about the box score of game two where they lost 6-3. That one was solely on the offense, and obviously some poor defense in there. But I just you have to get a real DH. Like this was one of my big concerns going into the season, is you don't have a legitimate DH in this lineup. And I'm tired of watching this team employ DHs to go up there and embarrass themselves, miss on fastballs right down the dick, not drawing any like good counts here at all. Like, I'm just so tired of these DHs that don't swing the damn stick, and when they do, they're missing. I just it's so exhausting because in the entire existence of the Mets having a DH, in their entire existence of the DH being in the NL, they have not had a single good DH except for one game. For one game in the first year it was implemented in 2020 with Yoenis Cespedes. That's the only time they had a legit guy where it's like, okay, this is a real DH here. But it was one freaking game. And outside of that, Dom Smith, JD Davis, and then you're looking at Vogelback and Roth, and now this crap. And even last year, like JD Martinez was fine, but he was cooked at that point. So come the deadline, if not the deadline, the offseason, I do not care if this team's not employing a real DH next year or by the trade deadline, especially the deadline, then how far are you going to go? Because this lineup just lacks so much length right now without it. And obviously, like this is the name that I'm pushing for the offseason, Schwarber. But like Matt said, if Solaire's available at the deadline, I hate to talk trades in April, but like that's how bad the production is from Marte. And I don't think he's going to get the Cano treatment until like June or July when a trade could actually happen because they're not going to trade him or cut him because the other options are just as bad right now. Like that's the problem here. Like we could talk about Marte needing to go. You're not getting production from the center field position either. There's literally no like the fact that Jeff McNeil on his rehab assignment is getting reps in center field tells you all that you need to know about how piss poor the situation is out there. And the fact that we're even talking about how they might have to carry 3 catchers when Alvarez gets back because Torrens is the one that's hitting well in the bottom of that order out of anyone else. That's a problem too. Like
I mean,
it's
maybe you
bad.
DH Luis Torrens at this point.
That or when Alvarez comes back, he
Yeah.
DHs and then you cut bait with Marte because this is just it's so bad. Like Luis Torrens with an 800 OPS in the bottom of the order. No one else is giving anything down there. Like just looking at the bottom of the lineup right now, when you look at the OPS pluses, Tyrone Taylor, 19 OPS plus, Marte, 68 OPS plus, Mark Vientos, 37, Brandon Nimmo, 95, Francisco Lindor even, 89 right now. And when you look at the bench options, Hayden Senger, 56, somehow better, somehow on par with their DH, which is like when your third catcher is on par offensively with your DH, you have a problem here. Jose Siri, -7. Jesse Winker, 88. Brett Beatty, 22. And there's no signs of, outside of Mark Vientos, and Lindor will be better. Outside of those two, there are no signs of this getting better. Like, Brandon Nimmo looks like he's having an identity crisis up there. You're not going to get, like, maybe you'll get better from Taylor, but not by much. And he's not even playing well defensively, which is what he's here for, which is another big concern right now. And then a guy like Brett Beatty is just a joke of a player. Like the fact that we have people yearning for Vientos to DH so Brett Beatty could play third base, since that's how poor guys like Marte are playing. That's bad. Like, I don't care what the record says. This isn't good, and this is not sustainable at all. I'm sorry.
I think the biggest thing, and I think it's come to that point, but I think there might have to be a lineup change. And again, we brought this up before, but I think the way to do it is to move Vientos up to the 2 hole. Because I mean, really, that's the only option you do have. Because really, with the bottom of the lineup, there is no adjustment you could make. And I think pretty much, Lindor, you're gonna leave him in that leadoff spot. But again, I think because Vientos, like I mentioned before, it does look like he's finally starting to get out of that funk a little bit, because he's working better at bats. He's making harder contact. He's starting to finally get a couple base hits now. I think because especially when you look at last year and in the playoffs, Vientos was actually pretty productive out of that two hole. Like he was hitting pretty well, and I just think if you put him to that two hole, you're gonna give him more pitches to hit. And now even then, like if Lindor gets going and now you have Vientos who's looking like he's getting that funk and he can get on base. Now you would have guys consistently on first and second, and then for a guy like Juan Soto who we know is not firing all cylinders yet, you know he'll get more pitches to hit, and then that could get him going. And then obviously you don't want to move Pete out of that three hole, but you know I think lineup positioning is kind of a little bit overrated. Like I think if Pete's hitting fine out of the three hole, he'll be fine hitting out of the cleanup spot, and that allows you to now move a guy like Brandon Nimmo out of the cleanup spot, and now you allow him to bat him five, and then so on. I think right now, because really, like I mentioned, like you can't change anything with the bottom of the lineup as of right now, unless you're gonna make a small trade here and there. I just think the biggest thing right now is if you're gonna do a lineup change, like you do what we said, like move Vientos to the two hole, and you move a couple guys down, and maybe that gets some guys going.
Well, we do have the lineup for tonight's game that just dropped. So Lindor's leading off, obviously. Soto second, Alonso third. Then you have Vientos hitting cleanup, so he's moving up a little bit. Brandon Nimmo's going to hit fifth. Marte's going to hit six. Terren seven. Beatty eight, and then Taylor ninth. Why is Acuna not in the lineup? Why is Acuna not in the lineup? I don't care about the lefty righty crap. Why is Acuna not in the lineup?
I don't know.
That's terrible. And I get that he had the mental miscue in the field, which we'll talk about, but Acuna should be in the lineup over Beatty. Like, not even a question. But let's talk about these other games. I'm just gonna recap both of them in one shot here, just so we could kind of like keep it open panel and talk about you know, everything all in one here. But in game two, very frustrating yet again from the offense. Pete Alonso had a solo shot in the first inning to get the Mets on the board early, which was great to see. But fast forward later into the third inning, unfortunately, there would be trouble as Harrison Bader gets a single because Harrison Bader was a pain in the ass with all these infield hits throughout the series. He would steal a bag. Byron Buxton gets a single. And then you get that pop out bunt, and you think maybe they're going to get out of trouble. Unfortunately, Lindor with an error, and this loss really fell on him because that tied it up at one. And then Carlos Correa would get a single to make it 2-1. But Juan Soto would respond with a home run to tie the game up at two, which was very promising. It just unfortunately in the bottom of the fourth inning, Larnach got hit by a pitch. There was that double that got reviewed where it looked like maybe it was a home run. I still don't love the fact that how it was handled, that situation. And I'm not saying that the Mets got screwed because you don't deserve the calls when things are going poorly and you're playing the way you are. But they probably should. I still feel they should have ruled the runner that was going home out. Again, you don't deserve the call at the end of the day, but that was just my opinion in the moment there. Um, and I agree with what I saw what Evan Roberts said on his show, and I agree with it that they need to do what the NFL does. Just let the play develop and then go to the review. So like you don't have this, all right, what do we do here? And you have to you have to play pretend here and figure out where guys need to go. Harrison Bader then will get an infield single that'll make it 3-2. Mark Vientos can't make the throw, unfortunately. McGill would get out of trouble there the best that he could. So again, bending but not breaking, which is what Tyler McGill did throughout that outing, and it was similar to the one last time out there where he was getting two outs and then just couldn't get that last batter away. The bottom of the fifth inning, Buxton gets a single, steals a bag. A fielder's choice would bring him in to make it 4-2. And then in the bottom of the sixth inning, Julian got a big hit to make it 5-2. Jesse Winker would get a sac fly to cut the lead down to 5-3. Even though the Mets had traffic on the bases, unfortunately, Lindor did not come up big in the spot there. Brooks Lee ended up getting a home run, which was kind of the writing on the wall in that game as Max Kranick showed the first signs of being human in this series. Pete Alonso had a double in the eighth inning, but the Mets would not drive him in. And that was pretty much all she wrote. The Mets teased maybe they would come back in the ninth thanks to some poor defense from the Twins. But unfortunately, that did not happen. And then when you look at game three, just to fast forward there, because again, I want to talk about it and then make this kind of like an open discussion here. In the top of the second, Jesse Winker would get a leadoff double. Brandon Nimmo got a single. And to no surprise, the Mets did not bring a run in that inning. Hageman looked really good, like as good as you could get from a guy that's coming in, making his MLB debut, and just trying to eat some innings here. Unfortunately, in the fifth inning, he allowed a leadoff double, got a ground out, but then Bader, yet again, being a pain in the ass, gets a single. And then fast forward, and this was this was something, right? So Byron Buxton on this play here ends up bringing in a run. Luis Angel Acuna, instead of being the cutoff guy, elects to go cover first base as Byron Buxton. You are looking him in the eyes, flying by you, rounding first base. And I don't know what happened. His brain shut off. He has CTE. I don't know. But he goes to cover first base when no one's there. Just basic fundamentals being lacked there. And Acuna, he makes some good plays, but he's one of the dumbest players I've seen. Like, I genuinely mean that. Bottom of the sixth, a walk from Jeffers, and then a single ended up scoring him on this play here, which this was, again, they're called the out at first base. But Jose Budo is arguing with the umpire instead of making the throw home. And like Frank said on Mets Weekly, when do you ever argue with an ump and they're like, you know what? You're right. We're going to change our mind on the call. How about finishing the play and then arguing with the umpire if you disagree? And if that play's made, the Mets win this game because in the eighth inning, Lindor would get the single that he ended up getting. Soto strikes out. Pete Alonso gets that double to make it 3-1. Winker with a double, 3-2. Acuna tied the game up at 3, and all of a sudden, all right, the Mets are in a spot to potentially steal a game here. And then once you get to the 10th inning, you knew it was over. Um, Pete Alonso walks. Winker, though, this is the at bat I was talking about, where Pete Alonso, not a single pitch in the zone. He walks. Winker hits it to the double play as he swings first pitch. Nimmo swings first pitch, which he did in every at bat in this game. And then Ty France ended up getting a single to win the game. When I saw Buxton was the runner on second, I knew it was done. Terrible. 3 for 12 with runners in scoring position. In game two, they were 0 for 4. Need I say more? And Soto with a really bad day yesterday, over 5 with 3 strikeouts. We'll talk more about him after, but overall, your thoughts with game 2 and game 3?
I mean, game two. I mean, just to start off, I thought McGill wasn't great, wasn't terrible. He was just decent. Like, I mean, when you look at a lot of his like pitch breakdown, I mean, the one thing that really surprised me with McGill, and we brought it up before, but his probably his best pitch this season was his slider, and he really did not use his slider a lot last outing. Because if you compare it to the four seamer and the four seamer he threw it 39 times, sinker he threw 31 times, only 14 times on the slider. So I'm kind of confused on why he decided not to, use that pitch more. But I mean, like, I thought McGill was fine. Like, he was doing more of those things like we talked about last time in his last outing against the Marlins, where he was getting those two quick outs and then couldn't get the third. He couldn't get the third out at all. But yeah, really, it wasn't his fault until it wasn't his fault, but I mean, kind of the Lindor error did screw him. And I mean, good to see that Lindor he took accountability after the game, but you can't be making those kinds of mistakes. You just can't. It's simple ground ball. You got to make it. But I mean, yeah, the top of the ninth, I mean, sorry, the bottom of the or yeah, sorry, the top of the ninth really like it, it was just it was a typical Mets where, they're in the game pretty much and then you think they're out of it, but then of course they just have to kind of tease you a little bit because I mean credit to Yolan Duran because this guy's just, I mean, nasty. When you see him pumping in 98, 99 mile an hour splitters, I mean, it's tough, but I mean, the Mets were able to kind of, make it a close game. I mean, obviously, because you have Vientos getting on with the error, Torrens, gets out, Winker gets out, and then Acuna, with the single, and then just once Lindor came up there and he swung at the first pitch that was out of the zone. And then he got it to a 3-1 count. And once he kind of missed on that splitter, I knew Duran had him dead in the water, threw him a fastball up and in, and he swung over it. They ended up losing that game. But I mean, yeah, the third game was probably one of the most frustrating games that we've had this year. And I mean, pretty much, it started kind of right from the beginning because I mean, 1, 2, 3 inning in the first, and then credit to Brazaban who started this game, and again, he looked really good, especially with his with the changeup of the sinker mix. Got a ton of swings and misses on that. Generated a lot of soft contact from Twins hitters. But then the top of the second, I mean, the top of the second really, really told you how this game was going to go because, Jesse Winker hits the double, Nimmo then singles, and for some reason, they send Jesse Winker on a single that was,
Forgot to even bring that up.
blooped into left field. And I mean, listen, I get that the offense hasn't been good, and you kind of want to bring in runs as early as possible, but it's early in the game. Like you don't have to force that. And I mean, credit to Harrison Bader who made the good throw online, but still there was no reason to test that whatsoever. You have first and third, nobody out. Just be patient, and again, it was a dumb send. I know Winker should have maybe beaten it out because he just missed a plate by like this much, but still, there was no reason to test it. And of course, they don't score. And then the game kind of progresses where the Twins aren't getting any runs, and the Mets aren't able to hit either. But then bottom of the third, you know, or no, sorry, top of the fourth again. Mets couldn't bring in anybody. Bottom of the fourth again, no one comes in. And then it's just more of the same until the Twins were able to break it open in the bottom of the fifth with the Harrison Bader single and then the Byron Buxton single. I mean, yeah, I mean, because that play with Luis Acuna again, you can't make that play. You can't. And the only way I could kind of see it, and I think Gary and Keith brought it up. The only way I could kind of see what Acuna was trying to do is if they were trying to get Byron Buxton to hold between first and second so they could get him on the pickoff. But still, like Buxton's a fast runner. He's going to test and try to take second regardless. So at that point, it made no sense, to try and get him, in a pickle between first and second. But then, like we were saying, the Mets were able to, to eventually tie the game up because, Lindor would hit a single, Soto strikes out, Pete again stays hot, makes it 3-1. With Jesse Winker with another double, made it 3-2. Nimmo grounded out, and then Acuna makes it a 3-3 game to tie it up. And then, Bader makes a really good play on Tyrone Taylor. But I mean, yeah, and then at that point, top of the ninth again, you get or no, sorry, not top of the ninth, but the top of the 10th where, you get Alonso to walk. And then I mean, the Winker one, like, I'm mad that he swung first pitch, but when you look at the location of where that cutter was thrown, it was a good pitch to hit. He made hard contact. He got unlucky. I don't love seeing him swing first pitch, but I mean, for me, like, listen, sometimes it's baseball. You're gonna make hard contact, and he got screwed out of it. It happens. But then again, the Nimmo one, you pop out again. There was no plate approach there. Swung first pitch and just made like contact. And then, yeah, as you said, once the bottom of the 10th came out and the Mets couldn't, generate any run, in the top of the 10th, it was over. And Reed Garrett comes in and Byron Buxton, on second base has the speed, and Ty France just puts a single into center field, and that pretty much wrapped up the game. But I mean, yeah, and then also the one with the Jose Budo play. Like, listen, I get it. It was a bad missed call by Hunter Weddlestat. I mean, hopefully he's okay, especially since freaking Tyrone Taylor hit him
Forgot
in
to
the
bring
head
that
with
part up too.
that line drive. But I mean, listen, and then this also goes back with the Mets as well because if you remember earlier on in the game, there was that close play at second base with Willie Castro, and the Mets looked to challenge. I mean, look at that point, that challenge for me, and I get the Mets have been pretty good at that point with challenges because I believe at that point they said on the broadcast they were 5 for 5 on challenges, and Harrison Freeland, that's kind of been his specialty. He's been really good in that aspect, but I think for me, and I saw it on the replay, I thought it was too close to challenge. And again, if you don't use your challenge there and you save it for in that situation with the Budo one, that gets overturned. There isn't a run, but you didn't have your challenge there. And look for Budo, you brought it up. You can't complain there. Like, listen, it's a bad call. Shit happens. But if Jose Budo was aware of the runner coming behind third base to home plate, he makes that good throw, and then boom, it's an avoidable play. So I mean, just overall, like what we talked about, like just overall, just a sloppy series from not only the offensive point of view, but from defensively, a couple base running, miscues. It's just yeah, the Mets really just have to pick it up.
Yeah. And it's just like even when that all that happened and they were questioning like or they wanted Budo, you saw him say like challenge it, or it's just like, are you not paying attention to the game at all? Because you would know that you used your challenge. It's really frustrating, but speaking of frustrating and speaking of things with this team right now, let's address the elephant in the room before we preview the next series and then wrap things up here. But uh, the Juan Soto thing. So Juan Soto had some comments, and it's very frustrating the way that he played this series, and or at least in the last game because he hit into a double play with bases loaded and all this stuff too. And believe me, I am no, I'll get my thoughts after. So let me read the comments first. So this is with Mike Puma of the New York Post. He said, "It's definitely different. I had the best hitter in baseball hitting behind me. I was getting more attacked and more pitches in the strike zone, less intentional walks and things like that. I was pitched differently last year. I feel like I am trying to be the same, do damage when I can, and whenever they want me to attack, and whenever they want to attack me, I take my chances. And when they don't, I just take my walk. I'm not trying to be selfish or anything and try to hit home runs every time. We don't have to attack we don't have to attack the pitchers as individuals. If they don't pitch to me, I just pass the baton and let Alonso do his thing. If they don't want to pitch to him, he should do the same thing." So I said it yesterday that the honeymoon is over and I'm frustrated and Juan Soto needs to produce. He will. I want to make that clear. Um, he will produce. I'm very annoyed right now that he's not producing. And but the difference is like I know that he's going to snap out of it. With the comments though, I think the biggest reason this got blown out of proportion so much is the way John Heyman labeled his article of basically being like, yeah, he misses the Yankees and all this stuff. And I interpreted it as first, and I'm not gonna lie, like I flipped out when this first dropped because I interpret this as, he's still talking about the Yankees. Could you please stop, man? Like, could you stop talking about the Yankees? But I he's not wrong with what he said. What he said is factual. I don't have an issue with that part of it. My issue personally, and I know that this is where you and I disagree on this, but my issue personally is it sounds like an excuse for not coming through in certain situations. And listen, I I get that he is being pitched differently too. Like he's probably not wrong about that. He is not lying about that. It's very obvious that he is. But my problem is that it sounds more like an excuse for not performing to the caliber we know he can. Because, like Frank said on Mets Weekly, and I kind of shared the same thoughts, in Washington, he had like Howie Kendrick and Ryan Zimmerman hitting behind him. In San Diego, he had some good hitters behind him, but not Aaron Judge. And Pete Alonso's off to the start that he is right now. And I know he wasn't taking a shot at Pete. I want to make that clear. But to me, I didn't love how it sounded like an excuse for not coming through in certain spots. And it's frustrating, but I'm also not sitting here and like my opinion doesn't change on Soto entirely to where I hate the guy's guts now. He's here for 15 years. To me, this reminds me of, and I said it in their chat as well on Mets Weekly. It reminds me of the Lindor thumbs down situation where it probably should have been done or been said, and it probably could have been done or said in a better way. But, you know, at the same time, realistically, we're going to forget about it. And it's, for the most part, just a nothing burger as long as he starts to perform. If he's not performing still in big spots come like June, then yeah, like I'm going to look back at this quote and say, I don't love that, this is like an excuse type thing and that he's still not performing. But for 18 games in, when he has not even been horrendous, like again, I'd like to see him come through in big spots. I think we all want to. And it's going to happen at some point. It's just frustrating that's not right now. But it got blown out of proportion entirely, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't have a problem with what he said, because for me, and you just said it, he said nothing factually incorrect. Like it's true, and again, because people will bring up, like, oh, like what you brought up with, like, oh, he's talking about the Yankees, but I mean, again, it's not like he went on his own and started talking about Aaron Judge and the Yankees. Like, Mike Puma simply asked him a question, and like the biggest thing, and I brought this up on the comments yesterday of Mets Weekly, but we always get pissed off at professional athletes for not telling the truth and not being honest with us. But then when an athlete chooses to be honest with us, we get pissed off at them because we don't like what they're saying. So it's like it's almost like the athlete is never in a win-win situation, because it's like when they don't tell the truth, people get mad at them. But when they do tell the truth and people don't like that truth, people still get mad at them. And like I said, for me, Soto said nothing wrong, because again, like, he is getting pitched differently. Now, I think, like, and I get your point of view where you kind of think like he could be signaling at that it could be an excuse he's making. I personally don't see it as that, just because I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt of, like, when you're that good of a player, like, you don't have to make excuses. Like, and for me, like I said, I don't think he's making an excuse. Like, and at the end of the day, look, he is getting pitched differently. He doesn't have Aaron Judge behind him. And look, the whole thing of, saying that Aaron Judge is the best, hitter in baseball, or whatever, people think, because some people think Otani's the best hitter in baseball, some people think Aaron Judge is the best hitter in baseball. But again, this was not a shot at Pete Alonso at all, because even Pete would agree, and Pete's a competitor on his own, but even Pete would agree Aaron Judge is a better player than Pete Alonso. I mean, that's just how it is. Let's be fair. But I mean, listen, Juan Soto, while he said that stuff, and like, he is true, like, he does have to make adjustments on his own. And I believe he will make those adjustments, because he is good enough to make those adjustments. And look, am I frustrated with the way he's playing? Sure. Do I expect better from Juan Soto? Absolutely, because he's getting paid $51 million a year, and I want to see him be better. But this whole thing, people blowing it out of the water, and really, when you see it on Twitter, and I know Twitter's a freaking toxic cesspool sometimes, so you can't take everything seriously. But the way people are saying, oh, like, Juan Soto sucks, like, yeah, he's not good. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Then let's just fucking trade him or DFA him if he's not that good. I mean, seriously, people, like, listen, I get, as sports fans, we're emotional and we want to see results right away. But can we think logically sometimes? Like, can we put rationale into our thinking from time to time? Because, like I said, like, listen, has Soto been great? No. But I'm not gonna be here and sit here like that he's terrible, or like that, his career is like over, and that, like, he signed the contract and now he's gonna be a bum. No, because, like, even like when you take a look at the numbers, right, and let's compare it to, Francisco Lindor last year, who started off slowly from the 18 games from this year, right? Soto's hitting 231 with a 367 on base, 431 slugging, and a 798 OPS for a WRC plus of 128. You compare that to Francisco Lindor's first 18 games last year: 151 batting average, 259 on base percentage, 219 slugging, an OPS of 478 with a WRC plus of 46. And we all know how Francisco Lindor ended last year. So people just have to calm down. Listen, I get it. Like I said, Soto he's being a bit frustrating right now with the way he's looking at the plate right now, but he's going to get better. It's sort of like similar last year, like, and I know this is hockey talk, but when the Edmonton Oilers got off to a really rough start last year and Connor McDavid was not performing, do you really think there were Edmonton Oilers fans being worried about the way Connor McDavid is playing? No, because he's one of the best players in the world and he just had a slow start. It happens. And the same is going for Juan Soto. He's just going through a rough patch right now. You could go to every single hitter in Major League history: Ken Griffey Jr., Barry Bonds,
Aaron
Derek
Judge
Jeter,
last year.
Aaron Judge, Alex Rodriguez. You could at some point look at their career and look at an 18-game stretch where they just don't play well. It happens. And even then, like a 798 OPS, that's better than the majority of players in the league in total. But like, I get it. I get it. I want to see him play better, and the rest of the fan base wants to see him better. He is going to turn it around and relax. And again, even like when you look at, like, because he brought it up how um he's being pitched differently and the intentional walks he brought up. Because even if you look at last year, right, in the 157 games that Juan Soto played last year as a Yankee, he was intentionally walked twice. This year, Soto's been intentionally walked twice. And if you remember back to the home series against the Marlins in the second game of that series, when the Marlins intentionally walked Juan Soto to load up the bases to get it to Pete Alonso, and this was when Pete Alonso was hot and on fire. Do you think at some point last year, when the Yankees were playing, do you think at some point last year that a opposing pitcher would have intentionally walked Soto to get the base load to Aaron Judge? No. Listen, he's getting pitched differently, but at the end of the day, he has to make the adjustments on his own, and I think he will. He will be fine. People just have to simply relax.
And this is what I was about to bring up, that Judge had these numbers, and what'd he do? Won the MVP. So again, I'm not freaking out. Like I said with everything, that all these conversations we've had for the start of the season, talk to me in June. Talk to me in June, and then we could then we could actually have legit conversations of certain things. But for right now, it's just I'm not there. I'm just not there, and it's like the opposite of the Chavez thing, where we have data to back up Chavez clearly isn't good. With this, we have more than enough data to know Juan Soto's better than this. So, yeah, like I said, we'll see. When he starts to turn things around. Hopefully, it's his homestand. As let's segue into previewing that, and then we will get out of here. But they start a 4-game set here against the Cardinals. In terms of the pitching matchup, Griffin Canning versus, I want to get the first name here, if it's going to load, Audrey Palant. And then in game 2, Miles Michaelis versus David Peterson. Game 3, Matt Liberatore versus Kodai Senga. Clay Holmes will face off against Sonny Gray in the 4th game. This is a Cardinals team that, for whatever reason, on the road cannot perform as well as they have at home. They have 1 win on the road. What I want is obviously 3 out of 4 right now. I want 3 out of 4. Unfortunately, that's not going to be my prediction. Unfortunately, I'm going to predict a split. I will say that they win game. I'll say they win game 1 and 3. I'll say they win game 1 and 3 of the series.
Since it's a home series and the Mets, for their part, have played pretty well at home, I'll say they'll take 3 out of 4. I'll say they'll probably win tonight. They'll lose the second game. They'll win the third game with Singh on the mound, and then they'll win the finale against the Cardinals. And I mean, the Cardinals are an interesting team because I mean, like you mentioned with the pitching matchups, you have Palant, who's looked decent so far. Miles Michaels' second game, who has been, he's had 4 starts so far. He's had 2 starts where he's been lit up, and then 2 starts where he's been pretty good. So he's pretty 50-50. It depends,
He kills the
how.
Mets, I feel like, every time, though.
Yeah, and then Liberatore, staying on the mound, so you hope that they win that game. And then the second game, Sonny Gray, and then Clay Holmes. Sonny Gray's a pretty good pitcher, but I mean, I know that when the Mets faced him in spring training, they hit him pretty good. So hopefully that trend does continue. But I mean, yeah, I mean, just when you look at the individual performances of guys, Lars Nootbaar, who's had a surprisingly good start with an 885 OPS. Nolan Arenado, who we all thought, he was cooked in the offseason. He's had a surprise good start so far with an 855 OPS as well. Brendan Donovan's performing well. Jordan Walker has been okay. 684 OPS, not the greatest. The guy who's really underperformed and has surprised me was Wilson Contreras, and I get that he moved position from catch to first base, but he's really been underperforming so far with a 424 OPS. I mean, this Cardinal team is weird because they do have some good players, but then you look at the rest of their team and their lineup, and it's not great. I mean, and it makes sense considering that they're a 500 team as of now. I just think that like I said, the Mets have played pretty good at Citi Field so far to start the year, and again, small sample size, but and maybe this is just me being more of an optimist. I think they'll take 3 out of 4. But they need to. But in order for them to do that, they have to play a lot better. Situational hitting needs to be better. The defense needs to be better. Pitching pretty much just has to keep doing what it's doing as of now.
Yeah, which let's hope that your prediction's right, or hopefully we're both wrong and they end up just, sweeping this entire 4-game set, which that would be nice. So we will go live, of course, to cover the series when it is wrapped up. But thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. We appreciate it. There will be a post game, of course, tonight. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And we'll see you guys in the next one.